Hello children. Today's lesson we are going to look at making notes. That is the practice passage 2 on page 11 and the lesson goes on till page 14. In our previous lesson we learnt about how to write a summary. I gave you all some pointers and one of the most important point was making a rough note that you can later use in order to write your summary, right? So this lesson you're going to learn how to make a note. The contents of this presentation, first we are going to learn how to find the theme. Then we are going to read the text that is given on page 12. We are then going to find the themes in the text given. We are going to prepare a rough note and then finally we'll be writing a summary. How to find the theme? There are two main ways of doing this, children. The first and the most obvious way is that your summary question will give you a hint or a clue about what the theme is going to be. So your theme is the central message or the central opinion that your text is based on, right? So your question most probably will give you an idea about what the theme is. If your question doesn't give your theme, then first we are going to read the passage, and this is your first reading, so this is when you get a basic understanding of what the text is going to be about. And here through the paragraph breaks you will get a basic understanding of the layout of your text. When you read it again, your summary paragraphs that will give you more information about your text in general. And when you read again, of course, you will understand how the paragraphs are broken, and you will understand what the main point of each paragraph is going to be about. Don't worry, we'll be doing the text on page 12 together. So, remember children, when you find the themes of your text, you can distinguish the important points, right? So this is the most important thing in a summary. You would not be getting marks if you miss out on important points, right? So knowing the theme, understanding and identifying the theme in your text will help you to distinguish the important points in your text. Let's now look at the text on page 12. I hope you all have your textbooks with you right now. Please read with me. Read the following passage carefully and then, in not more than 150 words of continuous writing, summarize the ways deserts are created by man or nature. In the past 50 years, the Sahara has engulfed 251,000 square miles of arable land. More than 1/5 of India is being overrun by the Thar Desert. Hundreds of square miles of northern Chile have been swallowed by the Atacama since 1960. The situation in Iran, the Middle East, Southern Africa, Argentina, and parts of Siberia, China, and the USA is almost as grim. Deserts, arid and semi-arid areas now cover 43% of the Earth's land surface. What happened to transform these once thriving lands into deserts? We assume climatic changes were responsible, but this is not necessarily so. say meteorologists. The 3.5 million square miles of desert that have appeared since the civilization began were mostly man-made. When man first turned to agriculture, he cleared the land of trees and vegetation, usually by burning. After a few seasons, the nutrients in the soil depleted. He moved to the next virgin tract. The slash and burn method is still common in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. The degraded fields became grazing lands for the cattle and sheep. As the number of animals increased, edible grasses and herbs were devoured before they could reseed. Such unpalatable woody plants and shrubs as thornbush, cactus, and mesquite took over. Finally, in the Middle East and Africa, the land was open to omnivorous goats that stripped all vegetation. At the same time, man had been cutting down forests for timber. Rain washed earth from hills, causing floods and gouging deep gullies in the bare lowlands. When droughts came, as they do in most generations, winds removed the anchorless topsoil that had taken thousands of years to develop. Eventually, the denuded hills were stripped down to desert pavement, a tightly wedged mosaic of rock and stones in which nothing can grow. The desertification of Mesopotamia, where agriculture was practiced some 6,000 years ago, was due to a different set of circumstances. With insufficient rainfall to support cultivation, man irrigated his crops. But not for thousands of years did he recognize the importance of proper drainage. Without it, irrigation led to salinization. As the waters that were let into the fields each spring evaporated, they left behind salts, alkalis, and other minerals. As the salinity increased, harvests became progressively poorer. Timber, felling in the mountains in the north, compounded the problem. Rains rushing out the denuded slopes carried silt, which raised the riverbeds and clogged the irrigation canals, causing water to overflow the dikes. The buildings of great dams had intensified the problem. For 50 centuries, the Nile flooded Egypt every spring, washing away salt and depositing a thin film of fertilizing silt. Since the construction of the Aswan Dam, water has had to be pumped to the fields. There is no way to wash away the salt deposits, and the rich silt is trapped behind the dam. For the first time in nation's history, artificial fertilizations must be used. Agronomists predict that soon Egypt may produce fewer crops than before the dam was built. Perhaps the most significant cause of the proliferation of deserts is the proliferation of man himself. In many arid regions, human and animal population double every 25 years. When a cultivated field or a pasture is exhausted, people can no longer move on to a new one because the land is already occupied. 14 inches of rain a year are necessary to raise a crop, but land-hungry farmers are ploughing up ranges receiving as little as an average of 6 inches annually. In the next drought, the soil on these lands will dry up and blow away. Other farmers are ploughing slopes so steep that erosion sets in from the moment cultivation begins. Can desertification be stopped? If there is still enough soil for plants to take root, the desert can be halted and even turned back. Ecologists' recommendations are quite simple. First, make an inventory of which arid lands are best for grazing, which for agriculture, and which should remain untouched. Limit livestock to what each range can sustain. Goats and sheep should be confined to certain areas. 3. Rotate crops and specify the number of years arable land must remain fallow. Keep production stable even in rainy years. 4. Reforest the hills. Plant stabilizing trees and shrubs on dunes and plains. 5. Promote solar energy, propane and other fuels. 6. Clear brush and inedible plants from ranges. 7. Redesign irrigation works to provide crops with only as much water as they need. Line canals to prevent leakage and install adequate drainage systems. Right, children. So you'll all understand what the text is about. It's about desertification and its causes, right? So first they talk about some causes that are man-made, then it talks about some causes that are natural, and later on it gives the remedies for desertification, right? Okay, so how to make a note? First, we are going to take each passage, right, and make a sentence that best describes this passage. It doesn't have to, it can only be a phrase, maybe 2 or 3 words that best describes each passage, right? So first, let's look at the first paragraph. Actually, first 2 paragraphs from numbers 5, 10 to the end of 10, it goes on the same theme. Shall we take a look at it? In the past 50 years, the Sahara has engulfed 251,000 square miles of arable land. More than 1/5 of India is being overrun by the Thar Desert. Hundreds of square miles of northern Chile have been swallowed by the Atacama since 1960. The situation in Iran, the Middle East, Southern Africa, Argentina, and parts of Siberia, China, and the USA is almost as grim. Deserts, arid, and semi-arid areas now cover 43% of Earth's land surface. First paragraph. The first paragraph is about, it gives you an introduction about how good land is turning into deserts, right? How good land is turning into deserts. If you look at the next paragraph, till number 10, you would see that it's the same thing. It gives more examples of good land turning into deserts. Let's look at the next set of sentences. When man first turned to agriculture, he cleared the land of trees and vegetation, usually by burning. After a few seasons, the nutrients in the soil depleted. He moved to the next virgin tract. This slash and burn method is still common in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. The degraded fields became grazing lands for cattle and sheep. As the number of animals increased, edible grasses and herbs were devoured before they could reseed. Such unpalatable woody plants and shrubs as thornbush, cactus, and mesquite took over. Finally, in the Middle East and Africa, the land was open to omnivorous goats that stripped all vegetation. Right? So, what does this talk about? First, we spoke about primitive farming. Then it was about animals and grazing. And finally, in this para, we spoke about goats. Right? So let's now look at the last part of page number 13. The textbook gives you a rough list of themes of what they think the paragraphs would be about, right? Page number 13 at the end. So these are a rough list of themes of each paragraph. First, it's about the causes. Primitive farming, then grazing and goats from 12 to 20. Cutting trees on hills and rain from 21 to 23. Drought and winds from 23 to 26. Lack of drainage from 30 to 37. Dams. Lack of silt and cleansing in 38 to 45. Population increase, farming of marginal land from 46 to 54, right? And then in the 55th sentence, it gives a list of remedies given by ecologists, right? Recommendations given by ecologists. So these are also turned into, each point is turned into a different phrase that explains it without writing the whole thing. So let's look at the first one. Check suitability of land, right? 2. Restrictive livestock. Rotate crops. Let fields rest. 4. Re-afforestation. 5. Solar and other fuels. 6. Clear useless vegetation. 7. Improve irrigation and drainage. Right? So this is the list of themes that is given in your textbook. Now let's go on to make a rough note. I hope you all remember what we studied under the lesson of making a summary. Right? So first let's look at the question again. Read the following passage carefully and then in not more than 150 words of continuous writing, summarize the ways deserts are created by man or nature. Do you see the theme, children? What I have highlighted in red is the theme. I told you the theme would most probably be given in the question itself. The ways deserts are created by man or nature. Right? Next, in our list of themes, children, in the previous slide, I spoke to you about the list of themes. We can now almost ignore lines from 1 to 11 because it gives us the introduction. Good land is turning into desert. So we don't want to know about that. We can completely ignore from the list given in line 55 till the end. Right, those are the recommendations by ecologists. We can completely ignore that as well because we are only looking at the ways deserts are created by man or nature. So we are only looking at the causes in the list given on page 13. We are only looking at the causes and we can now start writing the first draft of the summary. Let's look at the note given on page 14. Right, children? So, here, before writing the first draft, what are we told to do? The text has been, the points that we collected in our list of themes has been collected into two main parts. Right? So we are looking only at the causes and the book has now divided the causes into two main parts. Causes caused by man and causes by nature. Let's look at causes by man. Primitive method of farming takes goodness out of the soil. Grazing and goats cause further deterioration. No plants left. Cut timber on hills causes erosion and flooding. Lack of irrigation increases salinity and reduces crops. Dams, no silt, no cleaning away of salt deposits. increasing population over intensive cultivation causing erosion on hills. Right? Now let's look at causes by nature. Rain, erosion and floods. Droughts and winds, removal of topsoil. Salinity caused by deposits of salt. Increase in population of human beings. Right? So the last two are doubtful. They are put question marks. Why do you think that is? Because these 2 points are indirectly connected to human action. Salinity caused by deposits of salt. What is the main cause of that? That was crops and then the removal of crops. That increased salinity of the soil. Then increase in population of human beings. Once again, one can argue that it's natural. However, it is also caused by humans. Right? So these notes add up to about 71 words with the 2 doubtful points. Right, children? So you have to write a summary of not more than 150 words. But with these points, the points that we have made, the list of themes and this note we've been given, we can start writing a summary that will be on the minimum side of 60. So when you first write your draft, it will most probably be 60 to 75, and from there you can increase for up to maybe another 20 words or 25 words as long as you stay inside 150 words. Right? I hope you all have understood. So now it's time to write the summary. Use the notes we prepared earlier, right? So you have to use your list of themes and use the list of themes to make a rough note and make the rough note to write your first draft of the summary. Do not copy from the text. You should not use same words, same phrases, same sentences as it is given in the text. Why I'm telling you this is because it will increase your number of words. Right, children? And this limits your kind of creativity on how to write your summary, right? It limits your words. So the more words, more of your own words that you use, the more you understand the passage well and the more you can answer this question confidently. After writing, refer back to the passage for any doubts, right? So when writing a summary, we have to read the text at least 3 times. First, we read it to understand it, basic comprehension. Second time, we read it to see how the paragraphs are being broken off to. Third time, we read it to make a list or our list of themes, and then we are going to make a note out of it, and then we are going to write our summary. And finally, we are going to read the passage again to see if we have missed any important points in our summary. Check if all the points are there. This is where the list of themes is very important, and this is also where your rough note comes into play. Do not add your opinions, right? So for example, when we read this text, you can remember watching in news about how Sri Lankan forests how Sri Lanka faces a situation of deforestation, how there is flooding somewhere, how there is increased rainfall, how the crops are being how the farmers are devastated and the crops are being destroyed. But we are not going to add a single one of our own opinions in this text. Once again, why would we do that? Because it increases our number of words. Check for errors in spelling, grammar and punctuation. Right, very important, children. Errors in spelling, grammar and punctuation will cut off your marks, right? So it is important to read your summary again and again. When you finish your paper, come back again to the summary question and read your summary again. Cut out your rough work clearly. So when writing your summary, we won't be able to write it on first draft. Not everyone will be able to write it on first draft. So that's okay. We are going to write a second draft and sometimes maybe even a third draft, right? But the moment we have finalized our summary, we are going to draw a line across to show that this is rough work, and so that the examiner will not get confused, right? So in this presentation, first we learned how to find the themes in a passage. We read the text together. We made a list of themes of the paragraphs. We then made a rough note. We looked at the note given in the textbook and we wrote our own summaries, right? I gave you all pointers on how to write your own summaries. I hope you all will all write your own summary looking at the text that is given on page 12. Right, children? I hope you understood the lesson today. Thank you for listening.